Hi guys, welcome to Happy Visas. I've been asked a question, what is the taxation like in Russia? What are the taxation for businesses, individuals? Well, taxation is quite complex, but fortunately, to hire an accountant is very, very cheap. But I'm going to go through the accounts that I have. I'm on simplified taxation at 4% of turnover. So any income that I get from an individual, I pay 4%. Any income that I get from a business, I pay 6%. That's all I pay. That's on turnover. Now, I've also got a company, limited liability, Happy, and as long as I don't make any profits, I just pay 1% on turnover, corporation tax, or I can go on simplified taxation and pay 6%. So I've got a choice. And the other, when I'm on 1% of turnover, for not making a profit, if I do make a profit, I then can pay 15% on profits. So I've got a choice. 1% of turnover if no profit, I can have 6% on all turnover, or I can have 15% of the profit. So there's, they call it simplified taxation. It's up to you what you want to choose. It's like, different categories. Now, if I register as a sole trader, you're going to be paying for, most people buy a patent. They register as a sole trader, they get a sole trader certificate, and if they've got a property, a premises where they're working from, like a shop, and it's less than 50 square meters, you can buy a patent, so if you're working on the market stall, if you're working as a taxi driver sometimes, you can buy a patent, and the taxation is about 40,000 rubles a year, depending which city you live in. I think Moscow is a little bit higher, places like Perm is a little bit less. So you can buy a patent and pay a lot less tax. Now, your employer, let's say you get a job. If you don't have a residence permit and you're just on a work permit, then it's just a flat 30%, because they're not paying into the pension system, not paying into anything. The employer will just pay a flat 30% on your salary. Now, let's say you become a resident. Let's say you take the shared values visa. Then the taxation is like this. You depending on your income, you're going to be paying between 13% and 15%. It's going to be deducted by your employer, and they're going to be paying between 31% and 34, maybe 35%, depending on what type of job you do and the risk involved. So obviously it's a little bit less if you're in an office. You're not going to have an accident, and the government are not going to have to pay out large amounts of invalidity or anything like that if you had an accident. So if you have an accident at work in the office, the government will look after you. If you're working on an oil rig, then you're going to pay a lot more because there's a lot more risk. So you're going to be paying between the employer is going to be paying between 31, 34, 35%. So now, if your salary is low, you're on a small salary, you pay 13%, and if your salary is high, you pay 15%. So they've just increased it. If you buy any stocks and shares, probably you're going to be in the 15% category on any dividends, on any profits you make if you sell them. If you rent out property, let's say you buy a house here and you rent it out. If you rent it out as an individual, and you're not a resident here, you're paying 30% tax. If you are a resident, then it's 15% maximum. Property is a great investment because the bills are not so expensive. There's no licenses. You don't need anything to rent out your flat. There's no bureaucracy. You just rent it out. And then at the end of the year, you go with your tenancy agreement. You say, this is the tenancy agreement. This is what I've had income for the year. And they will calculate the tax for you. So if you wanted to invest, drop me a line if you want to invest in property. It's a great time to invest. And unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend it if you're from an unfriendly country because you can't sell it. You can transfer it to your wife, or you can sell it to buy another property, but you couldn't sell it to get the cash. It would just be frozen on a bank account type C. So yeah, the taxation in Russia, is very, very favorable. I go for the 4% of turnover. I just pay 4% on any income. Very simple, very, very easy. But yeah, there's other taxation systems as well. What a lot of people do as well, they set up a company, and any profits, they get their wives to invoice them at 6%, and they just pay 6% of turnover. So that's a good method as well. They become individual entrepreneurs. It's all done through the app on your phone. It's instant. It takes about 1 or 2 hours to get a decision. So let's say you've got a Russian wife. By the way, I do apologize. Actually, the 4% is if you're a Russian citizen. So I do apologize. So you just do everything through your wife if she's Russian. So let's say you're a company director, you've got your own company, and you want to get your tax burden down. You don't want to pay the tax on the profit. Just register your wife as an individual entrepreneur. She'll send you an invoice at 6% because she's invoicing a company, and then everything else is hers. There's no more tax to pay. So that's a simplified view of the taxation system in Russia. Thank you, guys. Please please subscribe. I don't get paid for these videos. I am going to be putting Buy Me a Coffee downstairs as well. Thank you very much, guys.